welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT video. Set 4 information is finally out and available to play on the PBE, so we're here to preview most of the champions and synergies. While there are 58 champions, there's a good portion of them returning from previous sets with similar abilities, so we won't be covering them specifically. Along with that, there's a handful of synergies that will be familiar from previous sets as well. Lastly, there's a lot of information to cover, so we'll have a second video to cover the rest of the champions and synergies that we weren't able to get to today. Also keep in mind that all number values may change from PBE to when the set goes live. With all that said, let's get started. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so make sure you're following the Giant Slayer TFT social media to keep up with everything that we're doing. We are also nearing 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe as we're planning something special once we hit that goal. Alright, let's now get back into the video. For today, we'll be covering 13 synergies and 19 champions. To start off the preview, we have Adept. Adept has 2, 3, and 4 pieces to it and consists of the champions Aurelia, Shen, and Yone. The effect of the trait is a form of crowd control as it slows the attack speed of all enemies at the beginning of combat. The duration increases the more Adept champions you have in. Keep in mind, for every synergy, if you have a chosen, it increases the specific champion's trait by 2, so you can hit 4 Adept by having a chosen Adept as one of your units. The Adept champion we'll be talking about today is Aurelia. Aurelia is a 3-cost champion with her traits being Adept, Enlighten, and Divine. Aurelia's ability launches a cone of blades in front of her that deal damage, apply on-hit effects, and most importantly, disarm enemies for a few seconds. The disarm effect is going to be the best feature for Aurelia's ability, as it will add an interesting element of positioning for her to be effective. The next synergy to talk about is Cultist. This trait consists of Twisted Fate, Elise, Pike, Evelyn, Callista, Aatrox, Jin, and Zillion. The effect of the trait begins once you have 3 cultists, as they will summon a Galio once your team has lost 40% of their health. Galio will then slam into the largest cluster of enemy champions and knock them up briefly. Galio will scale the more cultists that you have, starting at 3 and going up to 9. The different forms of Galio are Tyrant, Demon Lord, and Supreme Overlord. There's a lot of champions in this synergy, but we're only going to be talking about one, and that's the 1-cost champion, Elise. Elise will be familiar to anyone who played set 1, as her ultimate is very similar, but slightly different. She transforms into a spider, gaining bonus health and health on hit, but unlike set 1, she doesn't spawn spiderlings. Elise is both a cultist and a keeper, making her a worthwhile early game champion, as both of these synergies do well early on. Next up, let's talk about the synergy Dazzler, which consists of Lysandra, Lux, Cassiopeia, Morgana, and Ezreal. Dazzler is a 2- and 4-piece trait that makes it so that when one of your Dazzler champions casts their spell and hits an enemy, it will reduce the enemy's attack damage by a % amount. The duration is based on the amount of Dazzler champions you have, which is either 2 or 4. This trait, along with Adept, will be particularly good against attack damage focused comps. The Dazzler champions that we're going to be talking about today are Morgana and Ezreal. Morgana is a 4-cost Dazzler and Enlighten champion with an incredibly strong AoE ability. Her ability makes a large pool on the ground that does magic damage to enemies within it for a few seconds. It also shreds their magic resist during the duration, and Morgana is then restored for a portion of the damage dealt. Morgana is poised to be one of the best champions due to her CC, AoE, and her traits. Ezreal is a returning champion but is a 5-cost in set 4. Along with Dazzler, he's also an Elderwood champion. Ezreal fits the theme of 5-cost being quite strong, as well as his kit has a lot of facets to it. You'll shoot a barrage towards the enemy with the highest attack speed, healing all enemies that it passes through and damaging enemies that are hit. In addition, your allies gain an attack speed buff and enemies have theirs slowed. And yes, Dazzler is also applied to enemies hit if you have the trait active. Up next, we have the Dusk synergy, which consists of Vayne, Thresh, Cassiopeia, Riven, and Lilia. Dusk will seem familiar initially, as 2 Dusk applies increased spell power to all of your champions. But it gets interesting the higher you go up, as 4 Dusk applies additional power to just the Dusk champions, and then both effects are increased if you have 6 Dusk units. While the additional tiers make the synergy unique, it's likely to be mainly used as a splash trait for 2 Dusk. Lilia is the champion that we'll be highlighting for Dusk. She's coming into set 4 as a 5-cost champion and has Mage as her secondary trait. Being a 5 cost, it's expected for Lilia to be strong, and yep, she certainly is. Her ability is a strong crowd control that puts enemies to sleep for up to 4 seconds. This effect can end early if the unit takes damage, but then they take additional damage when they wake up. If you have Mage, this ability is casted twice, making Lilia a powerful late-game champion. Moving along, let's talk about the next synergy, Divine. Divine consists of Wukong, Jax, Irelia, Lux, Warwick, and Lee Sin. It's one of the largest synergies as the tiers are 2, 4, 6, and 8. Alright, so Divine has a bunch of bonuses that it provides. The triggering effect for the trait can happen with either the champion attacking 6 times or dropping below 50% health. Once they've met those 2 conditions, they will then take reduced damage and deal bonus true damage. The bonus damage scales depending on the number of Divine champions that you have. Let's talk about 3 Divine champions, Wukong, Warwick, and Lee Sin. Wukong is a 1-cost champion with Vanguard as his second trait. He's going to be a standard early game frontliner, but does have a bit of damage in his kit. His ability does some physical damage and also stuns the enemies that he hits. Overall, he's not too powerful, but CC is always nice. Warwick is a 4-cost champion with 2 additional traits, those being Hunter and Brawler. Because he's got Divine and Brawler, it would make sense for him to frontline, but due to his ability, he may become a strong melee carry in the late game. His ability gives him attack speed, lifesteal, and he moves faster. Along with those effects, once he scores a takedown, he will stun nearby enemy champions for a few seconds. Warwick's kit all points towards him being a viable melee carry for set 4. And lastly, we have Lee Sin. Lee Sin is a 5-cost Divine champion with Duelist as his second trait. The unique thing about Lee Sin is that when he uses his ability, which does damage, stuns, and knocks back the enemy to the edge of the battlefield, he has a chance to instantly kill the enemy champion if they can't be knocked back any further. Keeper is the next synergy to talk about with Elise, Jarvan, Kennen, Riven, and Azir as the champions. There are 2, 4, and 6 potential tiers for this synergy. Keeper will feel familiar to anyone who played set 1 as it's a similar effect to Guardians. At the start of combat, Keeper champions grant themselves and nearby allies a shield for up to 8 seconds. The shield is also stronger on the Keepers themselves. The familiarity of this trait is due to being similar to how Guardians function from set 1, except they provided bonus armor and not shields. Moving along, we have Moonlight. This synergy consists of Lissandra, Diana, Aphelios, and Sylas. Moonlight requires 3 champions to unlock the effect, which will increase the lowest star level champion up 1 tier at the start of combat. If there's a tie, it will prioritize the champion with the most items. And yes, you can end up with a 4-star champion if all of your Moonlight champions are already level 3. Expect this synergy to do very well in the early game. The Moonlight champions we'll be covering are Lissandra, Sylas, and Aphelios. Lissandra comes in as a 1-cost champion with Moonlight and Dazzler as her 2 traits. Her ability is simple as it hits a target doing damage and then exploding, doing damage to nearby enemies. Lissandra may not be that strong, but she's easy to 2-star, making her valuable for Moonlight. Next is Sylas, a 2-cost Moonlight brawler. Sylas brings the mana increasing effect we saw in set 3 as his ultimate will apply it, increasing the mana of any champion within a 3-hex line in front of where he casted it. Due to being a brawler, it's likely that we'll see Sylas as a frontline champion and play out similar to Kassadin from set 3. And lastly, there's Aphelios, a 2-cost Moonlight hunter. Aphelios is one of the potential ranged carries in set 4 due to the scaling of Moonlight. His ability also helps him do more damage as he summons a turret that acts similar to him. Next, we have Mystic, which consists of Janna, Yuumi, Cassiopeia, Shen, and Zillion. Mystic is returning with the same effect as previous sets as it just increases the team's magic resist with tiers at 2, 4, and 6. Expect to see this trait a lot, as in set 4, magic damage is heavily favored. The champions we're talking about for Mystic are Janna, Yuumi, Cassiopeia, and Zillion. Janna is the quintessential support champion as she's a 2-cost Enlightened Mystic. Her ability simply shields a few of the lowest health champions for a few seconds. She also provides an attack damage buff for those shielded. Yuumi is also a support champion but comes in as a 3-cost and has a Spirit as her secondary trait. Yuumi will also target the lowest health ally, but instead of shielding, she heals them for a percentage of their missing health and gives them attack speed. She will then repeat this effect, but instead does it to the furthest ally away. Cassiopeia is back, but comes in as a 4-cost utility champion, with her traits being Mystic, Dazzler, and Dusk. Her ability will stun the champion she targets and nearby champions. Additionally, those units take extra damage during that time that they're stunned. Cassiopeia is likely to be a staple champion of Set 4 due to her CC and her traits. And the 5-cost champion for Mystics is Zilean. Zilean is also a cultist and is a powerful late-game support unit. His ability places an effect on a few low-health allies that will revive them when they die. Once they revive, they will come back with a bit of health, lose any debuffs, and gain bonus attack speed. The Ninja synergy is back from Set 1. Ninja consists of Zed, Akali, Kennen, and Shen. The effect is the same as previously, with the units gaining bonus attack damage and spell power. Keep in mind that this trait only works if you have either 1 ninja or 4, as anything in between those nullifies the synergy. All of the ninjas are the same as their previous iterations in other sets, except for Shen, so we'll cover him. Shen is a 4-cost Adept, Mystic, and Ninja champion with an amazing frontline ability. When he casts his ult, he dashes past the target and shields himself while taunting adjacent enemies. The shield doesn't last long, but the amount of crowd control his taunt provides is tremendous. Expect to see Shen in a lot of comps. Up next, we have Shade. Shade is a 2, 3, and 4 tier trait, with the champions being Zed, Evelynn, and Kayn. Shade champions will innately teleport to the backline, similar to how assassins function. The additional effect makes every third attack cause them to stealth briefly and make the next attack deal bonus damage. Shade should be an interesting alternative to playing assassins. Next is the Spirit Synergy, which is a 2 and 4 piece trait consisting of Teemo, Kindred, Yuumi, and Ahri. Spirit champions will provide an attack speed buff to allies once they cast their ability for the first time. The amount of attack speed is a percentage of the spell's mana cost, with the amount increased by a larger amount if you have 4 spirits instead of 2. The Spirit champion we'll be covering is Teemo. Teemo is back again, but this time as a 2-cost champion with Spirit and Sharpshooter as his 2 traits. His spell effect is similar to Graves from Set 3, as he fires a dart at the enemy with the highest attack speed. This does poison damage over time to the target and nearby enemies. Additionally, it will blind the champions that it hits for a few seconds. Vanguard is returning once again as a frontline trait for Set 4. Vanguard consists of Garen, Wukong, Hecarim, Thresh, Aatrox, and Sejuani. There's nothing fancy here, folks, as the trait provides additional armor, with the amount of armor increasing based on whether you have 2, 4, or 6 Vanguards. Aatrox is the Vanguard unit we'll be talking about, and he's a 4-cost Vanguard cultist. Aatrox has a ridiculously strong ability that should make him one of the best frontliners in the game. His ability pulls the furthest enemy champions towards him and then does magic damage. It's familiar to Blitzcrank, but instead of just 1 enemy, Aatrox pulls 2 or more if you 3-star him. Displacing backline champions into your frontline should make for some really fun combos in Set 4. Alright, and the last synergy and champion for today is the Boss, which consists of just Set. The Boss is a fun trait because it makes Set run off the battlefield and do sit-ups. Yes, that is actually what happens. Once Set loses 40% of his health, he runs off to do sit-ups and restore a percentage of his max health each time, and gains additional attack and movement speed. Once he's back to full health, he returns to the fight with all of his damage being converted into true damage. Of course, with such a powerful trait, it means that Set is a 5-cost champion. His secondary trait is Brawler to add a bit of tankiness to him. In addition to his insanely good synergy, his ability will grab targets and slam them forward, dealing damage to them and nearby enemies. The initial damage is based on a percentage of his maximum health, with the secondary amount being based on the targets. So yeah, Set is really cool and one of the most unique champions we've ever seen in TFT. That is going to be all for today's video, folks, but we'll be back with more Set 4 champions and synergies in part 2. Thank you for watching, and as we mentioned, we're super close to 10,000 subscribers, and with that, we have special plans once we hit that goal. So if you've been enjoying our content and you want to see the future of GiantSlayerTV videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe.